Cathy, if you would, please.
Great. Thank you, Ron. It's great to be here. Good evening, everyone. WNBA Finals ready to tip off Game 1. It's our 29th WNBA Final.
The WNBA was handed a gift from the heavens. A once-in-a-lifetime talent built to carry the league to unprecedented heights. A chosen one in sneakers prepared to rewrite the record books and finally deliver the organization the mainstream spotlight it had desperately chased for nearly 3 decades. But now that very same gift is threatening to rip the entire organization at its seams, exposing a dark, money-hungry underbelly of betrayal that has left its most devoted fans feeling like they've been knifed in the chest, thrown away like last week's trash. The one player destined to rescue the WNBA, Caitlin Clark, music, may be the very reason fans are now walking away from it. Music. And the commissioner finds herself trapped right in the eye of an inferno she appears completely unwilling or incapable of putting out. The league wanted the spotlight. They begged for relevance. But they were clearly never ready for the war that came attached to it. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about the very identity of a league. And the devastating truth is it may already be on the auction block for the highest bidder, with its original faithful left standing out in the cold. The narrative being sold to the public is one of victory. But the narrative being whispered in fan forums and private group chats is one of heartbreak and absolute disgust. A story of a league that received everything it ever dreamed of and in doing so surrendered music. Everything that genuinely mattered. The arrival of Caitlin Clark was supposed to be a rising wave that elevated every vessel in the harbor. A force of nature that would bring fresh eyeballs to every franchise and every player. Instead, it has become a catastrophic tidal wave of expectation that is burying the very people who kept this league breathing through decades of turbulent waters. Before Clark, you could grab a decent seat at a WNBA game for the cost of a fast food run, music, maybe $20 or $30. It was an affordable, family-centered experience, a neighborhood tradition. But almost instantly, everything shifted. When the Indiana Fever roll into town, those same seats don't just climb in price, they launch into a permanent orbit. We're talking about nosebleed sections, the ones wedged into the farthest corners of the arena that once sold for $10, now commanding over $200, sometimes $300. Lower-level seats have exploded from a manageable $50 or $60 to well beyond $500, sometimes even $1,000 on the ruthless resale market. Music. The reigning champion Las Vegas Aces, a roster loaded with elite talent, spotted the gold rush approaching and instantly relocated their matchup against the Fever from their home floor, the 12,000-seat Michelob Ultra Arena. Music. To the enormous 18,000-seat T-Mobile Arena, home of the NHL's Golden Knights. They sold it as an answer to overwhelming fan appetite. A generous gesture to allow more people to witness something historic. But the ticket prices narrated a far more cynical and calculated chapter. The cheapest available seats were running into the hundreds of dollars. A price point completely foreign and impossible to the average WNBA supporter just 12 months prior. This had nothing to do with accessibility. It was a cold-blooded business maneuver designed to squeeze every dollar out of a singular, fleeting moment. It was a league-wide signal. Music. The golden opportunity has landed and it's time to drain it for every cent it holds. Franchises like the Connecticut Sun and the Washington Mystics followed the blueprint, relocating their games against the Fever to substantially larger venues, all wearing the same mask of fan consideration. But as the ticket prices rocketed beyond the clouds, a dark shadow was forming on the ground below. A groundswell of fury and disillusionment, music, from the people who mattered the most. And it's a storm that no one inside the league office appears willing to confront, let alone calm. For every new supporter lured in by the Caitlin Clark spectacle, music, a devoted one is being ruthlessly shoved toward the exit. Their loyalty traded in for a thicker wallet. Music, a sense of deep, corrosive betrayal is eating away at the WNBA's core community. The diehards who showed up night after night to cheer in half-empty buildings on a random Tuesday. They were the heartbeat of this league. The foundation that kept the lights burning through years of doubt and struggle. The ones who believed in the product long before believing was fashionable. Now they are being treated like total outsiders in the very house they helped construct. Their decades of unwavering allegiance rendered worthless against a seize-the-moment cash grab. Social media is overflowing with gut-wrenching accounts from long-standing season ticket holders who can no longer afford to attend the one matchup everyone is desperate to see, or worse, are being priced completely out of their season packages because the cost of a single Fever game inflates the entire bundle beyond anything workable. Music. The message being delivered by the league, whether deliberate or not, is thunderously clear. Your loyalty was never worth anything. We have newer, wealthier customers now. Your 20 years of dedication carries less weight than the credit limit of a first-time visitor. This feeling of being discarded has sparked a quiet but deeply powerful resistance. It isn't a formal campaign with picket signs and megaphones. It's a boycott of the soul. A silent act of withdrawal. Fans are refusing to pay these outrageous, demeaning prices out of sheer principle. Choosing to watch from their living rooms rather than participate in a system they believe has thrown them away. They've named it the loyalty tax, a bitter punishment for their years of unconditional devotion. This isn't only about money. It's about dignity. It's a referendum on a league's conscience. And as fans screamed foul, music, their anger and bewilderment shifted toward the one figure who was supposed to fight in their corner. The one individual with the authority to step in. But her response, or more precisely her total music absence of one, would only accelerate the blaze. Every lens is now aimed at WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert, the woman responsible for piloting the league through this extraordinary and fragile explosion of growth. Music. In front of cameras, she radiates confidence. A polished executive toasting record-shattering viewership figures and sold-out venues. In interview after interview, she labels the Clark effect a movement and applauds the surge in attention as a landmark victory for women's athletics. But beneath the rehearsed corporate gloss and the surgically crafted public relations messaging, a deafening silence hovers over the very real crisis of ticket pricing and the sweeping alienation of the league's foundation. She has yet to publicly face the concerns of longtime devotees, offer any meaningful solutions, or even acknowledge the depth of their pain. This silence is being read in one music, of two ways. And neither reflects well on the league's reputation. Is she entirely powerless? A ceremonial leader with zero authority over the individual pricing decisions of the 12-team owners who essentially sign her checks? Or is she a willing participant, quietly blessing this aggressive league-wide money extraction, music, because it pumps up the league's revenue figures and paints her as a visionary executive on paper? A large portion of fans and critics lean toward the second option. Engelbert is the former CEO of Deloitte. She understands business architecture, financial statements, and bottom-line value better than virtually anyone in the room. And the business of the WNBA is suddenly exploding. By permitting teams to charge whatever the market will absorb, she guarantees the league's overall valuation surges upward, which simultaneously fortifies her standing and the league's negotiating muscle in the upcoming media rights discussions. Music. But this approach is proving to be dangerously narrow-minded and potentially ruinous. She is presiding over a league that is actively and openly punishing its most committed customers. Music. Her refusal to step in and mediate reads less like a deliberate strategy and far more like a wholesale abandonment of her obligation to the game, its legacy, and its community. The leadership void she has manufactured is being filled with outrage, distrust, and a widening conviction that the league's front office has been seized by unchecked corporate appetite. But the silence from the top was only amplifying another, far more volatile problem. A problem not fermenting in the bleachers, but simmering deep inside the locker rooms themselves. The eruption in revenue from tickets, merchandise, and media coverage music has ripped open a shocking and profoundly uncomfortable truth within the WNBA. The players, music, the actual architects of the spectacle, are not the ones collecting the windfall from this freshly minted fortune. While owners, ticket brokers, and the league apparatus itself are hauling in millions of dollars off Caitlin Clark's brand, the athletes themselves remain shackled by a rigid and notoriously antiquated pay structure governed by their collective bargaining agreement. Clark, the most magnetic draw in the sport's entire history, a player single-handedly filling arenas from coast to coast, is pulling a rookie salary of just over $76,000 annually. Music. That figure isn't just staggering, it is a slap in the face when you consider that a single courtside seat at one of her games can move for thousands of dollars. The league's total haul from one sold-out building on a single evening likely towers over the combined yearly salaries of multiple players competing on that very floor. This vast and unconscionable gap creates a tense and unspoken undercurrent running through the entire league. Veterans who have surrendered their whole careers to constructing the WNBA, grinding through overseas stints in the off-season just to cover basic expenses, are watching a rookie manufacture unimaginable wealth for the music ownership class, while their own paychecks remain stubbornly, infuriatingly unchanged. While most players publicly embrace the new visibility Clark delivers, understanding its long-range value, it is impossible to ignore the quiet current of potential resentment flowing beneath the surface. They witness the money pouring through the doors, but the system is engineered to keep it concentrated at the very pinnacle, firmly in the grip of the ownership class. This isn't exclusively about Caitlin Clark. It's about a fundamentally fractured economic model where the performers on the hardwood are the absolute last to benefit from the extraordinary value they generate. Music. It's a dirty little secret the WNBA would strongly prefer you never examine too closely, and it hands the perfect smokescreen to what the team owners are engineering behind closed doors, something far more deliberate and cynical than the public ever realized. This is not some innocent, organic case of supply meeting demand. This is a cold, meticulously orchestrated operation executed by team owners wielding sophisticated technology to bleed every remaining dollar out of the public's enthusiasm. The primary instrument in their toolkit is dynamic pricing, an algorithm-driven system that perpetually and automatically recalibrates ticket costs based on demand in real time. It is the very same predatory technology that airlines deploy to inflate airfare during holiday windows, or that ride-sharing platforms use to trigger surge pricing in the middle of a rainstorm. It exists for a single purpose: to locate the absolute ceiling price a consumer can be pushed to pay and extract music, every cent of it. When tens of thousands of users search simultaneously for Indiana Fever tickets, the algorithm registers the surge and begins inflating prices moment by moment. There is no stable price point. There is only whatever the machine calculates it can extract without breaking the transaction. This transforms the straightforward act of purchasing a ticket into a nerve-wracking, high-stakes exercise in frustration. But the story doesn't stop there. The league and its franchises maintain an extraordinarily comfortable and highly profitable relationship with the secondary market, platforms like Ticketmaster and StubHub. While they stand at microphones publicly denouncing scalpers and unofficial resellers, they rake an enormous benefit from the official resale ecosystem, where season ticket holders flip their seats at inflated markups. And the teams along with the platform each collect a second slice of that profit. Music. This entire architecture transforms devoted fans from cherished community members into pure data points, interchangeable components in a machine calibrated to extract maximum revenue at any cost. The communal warmth of attending a live game is being systematically dismantled and replaced, music, by a cold, transactional exchange. The owners are no longer marketing a sport, they are packaging a luxury experience, a velvet rope occasion. Music. And they have made the frigid calculation that long-term fan loyalty is a far less bankable asset than short-term explosive financial returns. And while the franchises were occupied tallying their newfound fortunes, another powerful institution was working diligently to ensure the ugliest chapters of the story stayed buried from public view. If you consumed nothing but mainstream sports media, you would walk away convinced that the Caitlin Clark story is a spotless, picture-perfect triumph for the WNBA. Every headline rolling out of major outlets like ESPN and ABC orbits around the record-demolishing television ratings, the packed-to-capacity arenas, and the celebrity-studded courtside sections. It is a uniformly glowing narrative, a feel-good chapter of a league finally receiving its long-overdue moment beneath the lights. But this carefully assembled and relentlessly amplified story conveniently sidesteps the swelling chorus of furious and alienated supporters who feel completely abandoned. Where are the hard-hitting investigative pieces on the families being squeezed out of the sport they've loved for years? Where are the sharp, uncomfortable questions being directed at Commissioner Engelbert about music, her strategy, if one even exists, to shield the league's foundational audience? The silence emanating from the major media organizations is absolutely deafening, and it points toward an undeniable degree of institutional complicity. The networks that carry WNBA games, most notably ESPN and its parent corporation Disney, are heavyweight financial stakeholders. They have poured millions and soon billions into the league's upward trajectory, music, and it is simply not in their financial interest to broadcast its festering wounds. Unflattering stories about fan boycotts, predatory pricing, and player pay inequity are poison for business and could tarnish the gleaming new commodity they are aggressively pitching to advertising partners. As a direct result, the prevailing narrative stays overwhelmingly slanted, projecting an image of pure, unqualified triumph. The league retains full command of the story, framing the boom as a universal victory, while the real casualties of this new economic order are quietly swept beneath the carpet. It is a masterwork of public relations engineering, but this polished and manufactured narrative is a tower of cards constructed on a crumbling foundation of fan resentment. And the league is placing a reckless wager that could strip away everything it has spent decades building. The WNBA is seated at a high-stakes poker table, and it is pushing all its chips to the center on a single card, Caitlin Clark. The existing strategy reads like a strip mining operation: harvest music. As much value and revenue as humanly possible, as rapidly as possible, from the once-in-a-generation hysteria surrounding her name, with little to zero consideration for what follows. But what unfolds when that hysteria inevitably loses altitude, as every wave of hype eventually does? What happens if, by some cruel twist of fate, she absorbs a serious injury that pulls her off the floor for an entire music season? The league is presently incinerating its bridges with its most dependable and battle-tested customers, the supporters who would still be filing into arenas and clicking add to cart long after the trend-chasing crowd has migrated to the next shiny attraction. By catering exclusively to the deepest pockets and the celebrity visitor, they are assembling a fan base composed of temporary thrill seekers, not a self-sustaining ecosystem of devoted community members. Thrill seekers are unreliable. They pursue hype. Loyal fans construct a culture. The league is consciously trading its culture for cash. When the buildings are no longer guaranteed to overflow for every single contest, who will remain to fill the seats? Will it be the longtime faithful who now feel invisible, disrespected, and taken entirely for granted? That outcome seems extraordinarily unlikely. The league is gambling its entire future on a Wednesday music night of hollow attendance and a gutted fan community in exchange for a monumental but fleeting payday right now. They are erecting a stunning new structure on a bed of loose sand, having forgotten that genuine loyalty is cultivated across years of trust, not purchased during a single feverish season. This gold rush has every ingredient necessary to produce a ghost town, leaving the WNBA stranded in a far more exposed and desolate position than it occupied before its so-called savior ever laced up and stepped onto the hardwood. In the end, the saga of the WNBA's present-day crisis is a tragic and deeply maddening paradox. The league finally secured the transcendent, generational superstar it had always required: music, to seize the attention of the entire world, but it was wholly and completely unprepared for the weight of consequences that success would carry. This enormous surge of interest has peeled back the curtain on a league that appears to place profit above people, revenue, music above respect, and financial returns above the very soul of the organization. The commissioner is pinned between satisfying a small circle of insatiable owners and protecting the thousands of supporters she has chosen to turn her back on. The players are manufacturing millions in freshly generated value while being condemned to survive on the same meager scraps as before. And the music. Very people who constructed this league brick by brick through their unconditional devotion and their hard-earned dollars are being informed in the clearest possible language that they are no longer welcome unless they can meet the steep and humiliating new cost of entry. The would-be NBA finally persuaded the world to pay attention, but it may have accomplished that feat by dismantling the heart and character of the sport it claims to represent. The defining question is no longer whether the league can sustain this trajectory of growth, but whether it will retain any genuine, deeply rooted fans once the smoke clears and the noise fades. Will this golden chapter be remembered not for the milestones shattered on the hardwood, but for the community that was shattered away from it? The league finally claimed its moment under the brightest lights imaginable, but when those lights inevitably dim and flicker out, will anyone who ever truly cared still be standing there to bear witness?